What's good, My Hero fam? Pat here, back with another deck profile. I know I said I wasn't really going to do one of these after Momo, but considering the last week or so in the community, I felt it was, about time to make one for my favorite character in the franchise, which is, of course, Deku. In the past week, we have seen a number of characters be played that most people considered either mid tier or low tier do very, very well. Ashido did a top four at the recent provisional, and obviously Denki, somebody most people had again pegged as either mid or low tier, ended up winning the entire provisional. So, yeah, there are a lot of characters in the game that I think are much better than people are giving them credit, including the boy Deku here, which is why I decided to make this deck profile. I will be doing it in a similar fashion to how I did my Momo deck profile. I'll be going through packages and explaining the thought process and how we actually play the game. So first, let's talk about the leader here. I am on Izuku Midoriya, also known as Deku. He is a six-hander with 28 life. He is good life and order as his symbols. I am playing on the good symbol because it just gives you the most generically good cards and the best punches, which you're going to need for his second enhance. But before we talk about the second enhance, we have to talk about the first enhance, which is name an attack zone, either high, mid, or low. If your rival's next attack matches that zone, it gets -3 speed. When I first started playing this game, I felt that this enhance did nothing, that it was basically worthless. However, the more you play Deku and the more matches you play against various different decks, you will get a feel for how their decks operate. This is an enhance that rewards a lot of game knowledge. And if you're unsure, name high a lot, because statistically, at least in the set 1 meta, or the 1.5, whatever you want to call this current metagame, most attacks, at least the good ones, are high. So if you have if you're naming high, you have like a 50% chance to give something -3 speed. And -3 speed is not nothing. Specialist of Sound wouldn't show up in so many decks if -3 was not nothing. So yeah, it is a very strong enhance. And when you start being more familiar with certain characters, then you can start naming specific zones. So for example, if you're playing against, say, Suyu, she plays a lot of highs and a couple of lows. So you can start naming high and low, and you'll be getting -3 speed on a lot of her stuff. And it'll make those really long strings a lot easier to block, assuming that you have things, cards in your hand, things like passing the torch. You have characters like Denki. A lot of Denki builds play a lot of mids and highs, so you can name mid a lot and some highs. So yeah, again, it's a very, very good enhance in my opinion. Next up, he has enhance once per turn. Discard your hand, so the cost is discarding your hand. You can do this on either player's turn, by the way, which allows you to have some defensive synergies with things like passing the torch. If you just don't have a hand that can actually block something. So yeah, you are going to discard your hand to give your punch plus 10 damage. That is a very hefty cost, discarding your whole hand. So when this card was first shown, people said that the cost was too much just to get 10 damage. And back then, there was a lot more damage resets in the format. You used to see You're So Obvious played a lot more than it is played now because people just play Plus Ultra instead as kind of like a pseudo damage reset. But yeah, this is a very, very strong effect, and it is the primary focus of how we play the deck. The way that Deku works is that he's more of like a mid-range control character that is trying to condition his opponent into making a mistake so that you can hit them with one big attack and basically kill them in one shot. So if you're doing your job correctly and setting things up, they shouldn't have a damage reset. They should basically be put into a scenario where they have no choice but to take the plus 10 damage, and you should be setting up your various different attacks and your foundations in such a way that discarding your hand, you can recover from it if something should go wrong. So yeah, that's the basic focus for how we are going to be playing the deck. So now let's move into the actual packages, and I'll explain what those are. So first up, we have the, the barrier to entry package, which is Plus Ultra. I play 4. I don't think I would play Deku with less than 2 or 3. It is a very, very good card, and a lot of people in the past have said that Deku is a bottom 3 or a bottom 5 character in the game. Before Plus Ultra came out, I would probably agree with you. But this card is very, very scary in this deck because as long as you have 1 momentum, you can use the first enhance on this card, discard 1 momentum, double your attack's speed or damage. So if you were to double a 5 damage move, that is 10. And then if you discard your hand and give it plus 10 damage, that's 20. That instantly kills pretty much every 7-hander in the game. So Plus Ultra's sheer existence means that this character has insane one-shot potential if your opponent is not careful in how they commit things, what cards they play, if they overextend. This character is incredibly powerful at backswinging on people, at punishing them. So yeah, just because of this card's existence. So that's why I think it is the barrier to entry. I think you need it. It also has this really sick line of text, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. When you block an attack with this card, you reduce that attack's speed to 0. So essentially you only need a 5+ progressive difficulty to be able to block any attack in the game with Plus Ultra. The way that I have Deku built, he doesn't really have too many flashy ways to mitigate damage. So Plus Ultra, again, at 4 here is largely just to mitigate damage on top of being an amazing pump for him that gives him the one-shot potential. So this is like the key card in the deck, the most important card, I think, in the entire deck. And again, I'm sorry, like if you're a budget player, you don't have these, there's not really another option. Like this is the card I think that makes him work. I think you can play as low as 2, but I really think you should be playing 4. So now let's get into the offensive cards, the attacks that I'm playing. And I will start with what I consider the conditioning package here, which is 4 setup strikes and 4 hardened chops. The purpose of both of these attacks is the same. You are trying to put your opponent into a situation where they have to expend resources, and if they choose incorrectly, the follow-up attack is going to be for a huge amount of damage. So setup strike is a 4 difficulty for a 3 check. It is got a 2 mid block. It is a 3 high attack for 5 damage. It has enhanced discard 1 momentum. This attack gets +3 speed. So this on its own, being a 3 high for 5 damage, is just an okay poke. And then if you have momentum, you can make it a very fast poke, and that is great for us because we're basically trying to put them in a situation where we want them to expend resources on this card or just take the damage. Either is fine with us. Chipping them out to death is fine because we can play a controlling game if we are good at using our first enhance. If they are going to block it, that's great. That means they have 1 less card in their hand. And if we have a slew of attacks in our hands, if we can make a really long string, that last attack is going to be fatal against quite a number of people, assuming they don't have a damage reset or something like that. So that is already good. The real kicker on this card, though, is the second enhance. Your next attack gets +3 speed. So you're going to throw setup strike out. And most of the time, just leave it at 3 speed for 5 damage. And so then the next thing gets +3 speed. So they can choose to block this card. But the card that comes after this, if there is one, is going to be much harder to block. So if they have like only a handful of foundations, say they only have like 2 or 3 open because they kind of extended pretty hard, and you throw setup strike, if they block the setup strike, they might not have the resources to block what's ever after it, and the threat of +10 damage is just way too scary. So most of the time when you're throwing out setup strike, unless they're sitting pretty with a lot of cards and a lot of foundations open, they're going to just take the 5 because the threat of what comes after it, again, is just way too scary. Hardened Chop is pretty much the opposite of that. It is a 5 difficulty 3 check. 2 mid block, has breaker 1 for some reason because this card is, just super pushed. It's super busted. I honestly think this is one of the most busted attacks in the game. It is a 4 speed low for 5 damage. It has enhanced destroy 1 face down foundation. Build the top card of your deck face down. So it has pseudo restand using the flip cards that are in the deck. We play cards like note taking to make the punch cards in our deck faster because we want our opponents to commit as many resources as possible so that way they are unable to deal with a potential +10 damage punch. If you flip one of those and then commit it at some point, you can use the enhance to obviously destroy it and build the top card of your deck and basically get a pseudo restand out of it. So that's very, very good. But the main reason to play it, just like with setup strike, is the second enhance. If it is blocked, your opponent has to discard a card. So you can go, here's setup strike. Do you want to actually block this? Because the next one's going to be harder to block. And then you can throw out a hardened chop after it, for example. And then it's very, very fast for decent damage. And if they somehow block that, they probably just don't have a hand. Or you can just open with hardened chop and be like, do you want to discard 2 or do you want to take 5? And there's obviously ways in the deck to boost this up so that it's more than 5. You can get like 8 or 10 damage out of this with some of the cards in the deck. So yeah, these two, just again, the threat of both of these cards is to just expend resources as your first or second attack in a turn in order to pave the way for a larger attack. So let's talk about larger attacks now. Should be fairly obvious. It is kind of a pretty stupid card, as you probably have seen this card a million times. It is Texas Smash. It is a 4 difficulty, 3 check, 1 mid block. It is a 4 high attack for 3 damage. It has a combo enhance where if the card preceding this is a punch, this move will get 4 damage. So for example, if Setup Strike is the card before it, it's a punch, this will become a 4 high for 4 damage. But because you enhanced it off of Setup Strike, it's going to get +3 speed most of the time. So therefore, it is a 7 high for 7. So very, very good. And then it has also enhance discard 1 card. Your next attack this turn gets +4 damage, which means that the next card after this, again, is very threatening. You're starting to see a pattern here with how the attacks work in this deck. We are just throwing out, sizable, pokes here and just saying, do you want to take this? And most people don't want to take 5 damage, or they don't want to discard 2 cards, or they don't want to take 7 damage. So they're going to expend resources to get around these attacks so that you can throw a big haymaker after this. So yeah, very, very, very strong line of play. Setup Strike into Texas Smash, and then the threat of the +4 damage on Texas Smash allows you to, again, keep putting your opponent in these situations where they are not really sure if it's okay to take the Texas Smash or expend a bunch of resources on the Texas Smash to block it, because the threat of, again, 10 damage is just really, really high. So after you give +4 damage, you will go to the very obvious card that is in the deck as a finisher, which is Reverse Throw. It comes obviously in the rival deck that Midoriya himself comes in. It is a 5 difficulty with a 3 check. It is a 3 low block, which you're probably never really blocking with this card anyway. It is a 2 mid for 5 damage. It is a throw, so unless they have something like Wall Cling or one of the new Ochako cards that was previewed, I believe, yesterday, they are going to take half damage most of the time. They have to have some kind of reset, Wall Cling, whatever have you, because this move is very, very good. It has Enhance. If this attack deals 5 or more Damgi, because it's not damage, they typoed on the card, you get to draw 1 card. So, yeah. If you have a string, like we were just talking about, where you Setup Strike and say the next attack is harder to block into Texas Smash, which is going to be a 7 for 7, which these two alone, that's 12 damage. That's half of a 7-hander's life. They probably don't really want to take this, so they're going to block this. But then this one here, this Reverse Throw, is going to enter as +4 from Texas Smash, so it is a 9. And if you discard your hand, that is a 19 damage move. And if they block it, they still take 10 and you draw a card. That is quite a lot of damage. Now, if you add Plus Ultra into the mix, like we talked about here at the start, you can Setup Strike. So this is, do you want to take 5? Okay, you blocked it. That's fine. Here's a 7 for 7. Okay, you blocked that. That's fine. Oh, you don't have any cards in your hand, or you are committed out, right? This is going to enter as a 9 damage throw. You first enhance Plus Ultra it. It becomes a 18 damage throw. I'm going to discard my hand and give it +10 damage. This is a 28 damage throw. Okay, you blocked it. Cool. You take 14. That is almost 75% of a 7-hander's health, assuming that they don't have, again, some kind of reset or some kind of way to get out of it, like Wall Cling. So yeah, this is a very powerful line. This is a very, very powerful attack to finish your opponent off with, or just chip them to get early momentum. I just can't see myself playing Deku without this card. You definitely want 4 of it. It is a very, very scary card. Excuse me. So the last attack that we are playing is One for All Full Cowling, 5% strike. Yeah, this attack's just okay. I'm just playing it because I have 2 of them. Its main role in the deck is actually, hold on a second, let me grab the Setup Strike so I can kind of explain it to you. So you can use Setup Strike here at the start on Momo, and then you can go into Full Cowling here, and it comes in at a 7, right? And then maybe you Plus Ultra it and double the speed on it, so it's a 14 speed move, and say, if you don't block this, I'm going to commit Momo. And that's really bad for them, because then that means that your next attack can be something like, I don't know, either reverse throw or, Texas smash here. One of these two, right, as your next attack in the string. And then you can just go, oh yeah, I'm just going to pump it huge. And they normally are trying to just only take 6 at most. So like having Texas Smash be like a 17 damage move against Nomu chews through quite a lot of health. So that's the main reason I play it. You of course can also dump your hand onto this move to give it 10 damage, and then dump your non-existent hand to just refill and reload on a draw 3. It's not really, in my opinion, a mandatory card. I very rarely find myself really needing it outside of the Nomu matchup. I think that's where it really, really excels. If you are a budget player or looking for an alternative, you can play something else like, say, Hardened Pummel. Mr. Bromley's wonderful tech, because it's good against a format where everyone's trying to play plus ultra, and then Eraserhead obviously is trying to block with erase. So yeah, that is basically going to be it for my attacks. Hopefully I have made some sense on how to play offense on the character. You condition your opponent with the smaller attacks in the deck, and if they make a mistake or you see an opening, you punish them very, very hard with the plus 10 damage. So let's talk about foundations. The most important foundation in the deck is Passing the Torch, for obvious reasons, because it has an enhance where you draw a card, but if you have no cards in your hand, you draw 2. Obviously, this is how you circumvent the drawback on the enhance. It should be obvious. It comes in the starter deck for a reason. You discard your hand, give something 10 damage, you commit Passing the Torch, you draw 2 cards, and usually you're putting plus 10 damage on the throw, which is going to draw you another card anyway. So that is the standard line of play. You usually always want to have this down on turn 1. This is, I think, the most important foundation in the entire deck because it covers your biggest weakness. Second most important foundation in the deck I have found is Harden. This card just has way too much text. It has a 2 high block, which is relevant because, again, highs are very prevalent in set 1. It has a response after you block with it. The next attack is -2 damage. We don't have a lot of fancy ways to mitigate damage in Deku. You're mostly using the power of things like Harden, things like Self-Sacrifice, things like Plus Ultra, and calling correctly on your enhance to mitigate quite a lot of damage. So Hardened is very, very, very important for that. It also has this really sick enhance here. Commit, your attack gets +2 damage. If it has Hard in the name, it gets +3 instead. So if we go back to that example we talked about before, where we Texas smashed a reverse throw, right? And made it a 9, and you plus ultra it to an 18, you can dump your hand, make it 28, and you can commit hardens to give it +2 more from there. So like if you have like 2 hardens down in that same scenario, that's 32 damage. That kills literally every non-Nomu character in the game except for like Ochako 5-hand, right? That is quite a lot of damage. So this is very good for forcing through damage. It's very good on defense because relevant block, relevant response. So yeah, just overall very, very good foundation I have found for this deck. So yeah, next up we have Specialist of Sound. I have found this to be a very meh card, to be honest. It is obviously a very good foundation, right? But I've found that when I am using my enhance correctly in a lot of matchups, that this is overkill, and I don't find myself really needing it, especially since there's a lot of 1-blocks in this deck in general. It's still very good to have. I don't really know what I would change it for. It's still just a really, really good foundation in general. But we are saturated with a lot of low blocks in this deck. So if you want to change Specialist or any of the other foundations in this deck with something else, you are welcome to do so. Obviously, of course, you can also increase the deck size here. I play a very trim 50-card deck because the way I've always played cards is to be as consistent as possible. And with this deck, I want to consistently threaten a potential 30 damage throw on turn 3 as much as possible. So yeah, Specialist, good card, not super needed, I feel like, most of the time. Next up, we have 4 Bonds of Friendship. I'm not going to lie, we're basically just playing it for its 1 high block and the 6 damage. The enhance to flip it to give a Fury attack -3 damage is good at mitigating a lot of damage from certain decks that are aggressive and things like that. Like obviously like your Bakugos, your Shigarakis, sometimes even your Minetas that you run into at your locals. Yeah, obviously the Bonds is just an alright card. Again, it's here largely for its excellent block and check. You can change it if you want. Next up, we have self-sacrifice so that we can make our pokes a little bit more meaningful, give things +1 damage here or there, and that damage starts to add up. It's also very good at using the Enhanced Destroy Foundation to give something -1 damage to mitigate the damage that we are actually taking. And of course, it has an excellent -1, or I should say +1 low block. So yeah, that's why we were playing self-sacrifice. Couple more here to finish up the deck. Note taking here, 2 low block, 1 difficulty, 5 check. Enhanced flip your punch gets +2 speed, just to make, again, our pokes scarier. That's all we're trying to do. We're just trying to make our setup strikes like 8 speed or things like that, or make our hardened chops like 6 or 8 speed, or Texas smashes 9 speed, things like that. We just want to make things very difficult for our opponent, so that if we decide to go all in on them, they are in a situation where we have these attacks that could be lethal, and they are reasonably fast. I value speed quite a lot in this game. I think just once you get to like 7+ speed, I find that a lot of players have a lot of difficulty blocking things. I'm sure if you've ever played against Eraserhead, you're very well aware of this. Just his moves are just very fast all the time, and it's really annoying. So yeah, just I try to emulate that same style in a lot of decks I play, like Suyu, like Momo. I just want to be playing attacks that are fast, and that's why I really like note-taking as a 4-of. I just really want my attacks to land and be meaningful and do the job that I am, they set out to do, that I have them for. And then the last one is it can't be fixed, because it's a 0 spam, 5 check, obviously excellent, +1 block, and it's stun hate. That's pretty much it. It just builds so that when we play against things like Denki, or like even like a Shigaraki, things that have stuns, Eraserhead might have some of his kicks like Wrestler Pro and stuff. I just want to have some kind of stun hate, and going into set 2, I feel like stun hate is going to be very, very important. This card, it can't be fixed, is going to be probably very important. A card like Resistance is going to probably be incredibly important, because if you looked at the spoilers, a lot of characters, a lot of cards have stun too. So yeah, you will need stun hate in set 2. So this is pretty much, I think, besides this and Resistance, are the 2 best pieces of stun hate in set 1. So there you go. That is the Deku deck profile in a nutshell. Hopefully I showed you all how to make it work, pilot it just like I did with Momo, and just give it a whirl. Let me know down in the comments below what you think of it, how it's doing for you if you decide to play at your locals, or even if you want to take it to something like a provisional. I have a huge amount of respect for Tam Cardwell for playing Deku at the provisional. Almost topped with it. Again, this, in my opinion, is not really a bottom 3, bottom 5 character, just because, in my opinion, for tiering things, low tier and bottom tier characters are characters in games that don't have options, that don't have ways to win the game. They are not complete characters. This character has a completely realized game plan. Is it the best game plan? No, but it is a complete game plan. And to me, that says that he is at least mid or high tier, because, again, low tiers and bottom tiers just don't have options. He has lots of options for playing defense. He has lots of mind games. He has lots of bad situations so you can put you in and can kill you. So yeah, that's going to be it for me. As always, have a nice day. Enjoy the rest of your week. And I will hopefully see you all in another one of these at some point later now.